We are Gold Ivy, a health company dedicated to simplifying health and wellness. The industry is lacking the honest experience and grit required to overcome the struggle, and we're here to fill that gap.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold. Join us on the fearless pursuit of self-discovery and growth.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
A Gold Ivy production.
Welcome back. This is Ivy Unleashed.
Yeah!
We have an incredible episode lined up for you guys. We are giving you access to yet another mind that we're pretty pumped about, and you should be too.
So excited. Before we jump in, I just want to say that we talk a lot on this podcast about the self. Yourself, taking care of yourself, tuning into yourself, making time for yourself. Sometimes we feel guilt or negative, selfish feelings when we make this effort. I don't know where this narrative comes from, and I don't care. If you want to be in a conversation with someone else, function at your job, be a role model for your kids, have fun with your friends, you have to be yourself. And you can't be yourself unless you have given energy and time to know who you are, what you stand for, and what you want out of life. There's just no way to do that without sacrificing something.
Yep, something's got to give. Self-care is what we're talking about today. We have an incredible guest that is going to help you think about what self-care means for you, how to make it a part of your routine, and why it's so dang important.
Yes, so this guest, I know Sonja as an animal and plant-loving, traveling artist that provides so much warmth and light to any conversation. Her talent has created sentimental artwork for me. Our conversations and her posts on Instagram have brought about growth for me, and her humor has brought a lot of laughs, even making my husband laugh so hard he cried.
Following Sonja on Instagram will add so much value to your feed. I know it has for me. She's constantly finding beauty in the world and adding her wealth of knowledge about health, finance, environment, and so much more. We are so excited to welcome Sonja today. She is a national board certified health and wellness coach, a yoga teacher, a financial wellness professional, a low impact minimalist, a debt-free lifestyler, and a houseplant enthusiast. She has over 9 years of coaching experience in both corporate wellness and private practice. Sonja empowers people to create mindful, sustainable, and intentional lifestyles through the power of coaching, and is passionate about helping people bring intentional self-care into their lives. So everyone, welcome Sonja to Ivy Unleashed. Sonja, thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm so excited to be here.
How's 2020 treating you?
Well, it's been a very peculiar year. Thank you so much for welcoming me. I'm really, really looking forward to being here in this space with you too.
Yes. And we want to just jump right in. We have so many questions for you. We want to pick your brain. So first things first, what does self-care mean to you?
Yeah, I love this question. What I think is that self-care starts with asking yourself, what do I need? And then the next step is giving yourself permission to do whatever that thing is. So I look at self-care as being really kind of the ongoing practice of engaging in activities that help you to build self-confidence and self-efficacy and self-esteem, and ultimately help you create a life that feels really intentional and empowered.
Oh, I love that.
That was powerful.
I want you to say that to me 10 more times because I just want to do whatever that means. Oh, that's so powerful. And I love that. I love too that it's tied to, yes, it's taking care of yourself, but the more that you do that, the more that you build that confidence. And that's just so important. And that's exactly what we want to help people do. We want to help build confidence. And it truly is making yourself a priority and tuning into what is it that I need? It's like the perfect way to put that.
What do I need? I don't know. What do I need?
Yeah, it changes. It changes moment to moment.
Yeah. I guess it's finding the time to really reflect, to ask yourself. And that's kind of the first part, is creating that time and space for yourself. I'm sure you have a lot of clients who and we talk about time management a lot and maximizing your time. You know, what do you say to those clients who have no time for self-care?
I think there's a really common misconception that self-care needs to be something that you like add to your to-do list, or something that you have to check off, or something that needs to take up a lot of time or energy, or ultimately like it needs to interrupt your day. And I look at self-care really differently. I think honestly that true self-care really is kind of inextricably intertwined with living a life full of integrity and a life that really represents your values. So I think that you find true self-care really in the actions that you take on a daily basis, the routines that you practice, and the life that you lead. I don't think that it needs to be something that interrupts your daily life. I think it is your daily life.
Oh, I love that, Sonja.
It's your habits.
Yes.
It's not these little actions that you have to do. I think it's important to look at that too, you know, and being intentional, like you said, not, okay, I'm going to take a bubble bath. Okay, I'm going to do this, but actually being intentional about it. And when you're in that space doing it, it should feel right and true to you, like you said.
Yeah. And I think too, with self-care, you think of like rejuvenating yourself, you know? And so a lot of times it comes with this picture of a spa or getting your nails done or whatever, something like that. But in reality, like Sonja's saying, if you're aligned with your values of what you need and who you are, you get rejuvenated in that. When you're aligned, you have so much more energy and you're capable of, you know, moment to moment, knowing what you need and speaking the way that's true to you. Because when you don't, that's when you get worn down.
That's when you feel off.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that speaks to what a lot of people experience which is sort of like living out of alignment with your values, or living a life that feels really busy or really full, but not in a good way. And when that's not ultimately what you want, you might experience something called cognitive dissonance. And the definition of that term is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions or attitude change. So really put much more simply, it's kind of like saying one thing and doing another.
Right.
And that is an awful feeling because it compromises our integrity. And so when you use self-care to correct cognitive dissonance, it becomes a Band-Aid. And it becomes like, it feels like another task that you have to complete or something that you have to do. But when you create a life that's really mindful and really full of intention, you kind of discover that the secret to integrating self-care is just creating a life that you don't feel like you need to escape from.
Ooh,
yes.
that's gold.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like social media right now plays a huge role into that, and the comparison game, how we should act and what we should be feeling. And it's really hard for a lot of people, you know, myself included, to find that time to figure out what is true to you and to learn how to listen to your truth when you're being bombarded with all of these messages, all of these images. What do you recommend? Where do you recommend people start?
That's a great question. And it can feel so overwhelming. If you're noticing that you're living your life from a place that doesn't feel really authentic or really true to yourself, it can feel really overwhelming to think about trying to create a life that you don't feel like you need to escape from, or trying to intertwine self-care into all of your daily routines. And so I want to make sure that we talk about how we really break this down. And I think what I would say to someone who's really new to self-care is to first give yourself credit for the things that you're already doing. Like if you have ever paused and taken a deep breath, or if you've ever sent a call to voicemail, if you've ever shut your computer and gotten up to take a break, if you've ever reflected on something that you're grateful for, you've already practiced self-care. So celebrate that. I don't think that we give ourselves enough credit for how hard this work can be and how many messages there are in the world telling us not to take care of ourselves. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're really not quite sure what self-care looks like for you, and you can't totally answer the question of what you need in the moment, I have a quick visioning exercise that I'd love to just kind of walk you through and introduce to your listeners.
Yes, please.
Oh my gosh,
we love this
absolutely.
stuff.
All right. So my first question that I would love to encourage people to maybe just hit pause and take a moment to actually write down some answers to these questions. The first question is, what helps me feel nourished? And the next question is, when do I feel most nurtured? And the next is, when in my life have I been the most calm and relaxed? And then finally, what are 3 things that leave me feeling the most fulfilled at the end of a good day? So those questions really center around self-awareness. And self-care is so linked to self-awareness. The more we know ourselves, the better we understand how to take care of ourselves. And so those can be some really great questions to just kind of get started with asking yourself and with deciding what self-care needs to look like for you.
Oh, I love those. And those are really great journal prompts. If you didn't have a chance to write those down, we'll definitely link those in the show notes. Yes. I know those are ones that I will reference.
And I just felt like a calm come over me too.
Same.
Did you feel
closed
that?
my eyes.
Oh, yeah. And to think just like an example of one of them of where you feel the most relaxed or when you felt the most relaxed. Like I just thought of myself on vacation, and it's such an important part of self-care for me is having a vacation planned or reminiscing on a vacation, looking back at pictures, making like an album, like a Shutterfly album or something about them or something like that where, it's hard in 2020 because I don't have that right now. I don't have a trip to look forward to. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so it is nice to think about that. So maybe we plan something in 2022, or something to look forward to because those thoughts do help me take better care of myself when I have those things to look forward to for sure.
Yeah. And something I thought of too is vacation. And then I asked myself, why is it just vacation? What is it about vacation that leaves me feeling nourished and relaxed? And I think it's because I'm not worrying about anything except that moment and I'm fully present. So that's kind of brought some self-awareness of I need to be more present.
Yeah, I love that. Such a good thought.
I think one thing that's been so challenging about 2020 for a lot of people is that it's really forced people to confront the reality that they're not living a life that they don't feel like they need to escape from. I think a lot of people feel like they really need to escape from their daily routines and like they need to escape 2020. And I think that this has been a beautiful year to illustrate to us what we need to integrate in our daily home lives, in our normal routines that help us feel nurtured and nourished and cared for, so that the answer to the question doesn't always just become vacation or escapism. Of course, vacation is wonderful. It's a beautiful way to take care of yourself. But how can you build those things into your daily routines so that you don't feel like the 2 weeks that you're out of the office are the only times that you're taking care of yourself?
Absolutely. And it's forced people to really slow down and have that time. And, myself included, have kind of freaked out when you're used to being so go, go, go. And now you have this time where you're forced to pause and move slower and think about these things. And you're realizing that you are go, go so that you don't have to deal with the way you're truly feeling. I know that's something that I've had to confront. So I'm curious, what do you recommend to people who are nervous to slow down and it's scary for them?
Yeah, I recommend starting by seeking support and accountability from a coach, finding someone that you can work through this stuff with and be honest and open in conversations around building up your own sense of self-worth and self-efficacy and really understanding your own values and what integrity means for you. Those are big questions. And they're not questions that anybody asks us as we're growing up. Those are questions that you really only confront when you are working with a coach or a therapist or doing something, really one-on-one. And so I think starting by accepting that maybe it's time to bring someone else into the equation and have some conversations around doing this big work. I think that can be a fantastic place to start. I also think that, we do put so much pressure on ourselves to think about how self-care should be easy. Like we see it all the time on social media. We watch people engaging in self-care and taking these lavish bubble baths and doing all these beautiful things, which are great examples of self-care. But you're right, it invites the comparison game. And comparison is the thief of joy. And it's absolutely something that people fall victim to. And so, I think that it's really important for people to understand that while self-care can seem like it should be easy, there's actually a lot of neuroscience behind self-care. And one thing that I love to talk to my clients about is how we build neural pathways for habits and routines that we do a lot. So if self-care isn't something that you do a lot, and if it's not something that's been a part of your life, you likely don't have built up and established neural pathways for engaging in self-care, which means that it's harder and that it has to be a little bit more intentional and that it requires a little bit more work from you. So as we age, our brains do something that's called synaptic pruning, which means that it essentially eliminates synapses and synaptic connections that we don't use anymore. And so one of the most effective ways of really establishing a routine of self-care is to stack your self-care habit onto something else that you're already doing. So for instance, if you're already brushing your teeth, first of all, that's self-care. You can celebrate that. But if you want to add on to that a little bit by maybe practicing a mantra or using your face jade roller or whatever else it might be that just kind of feels nourishing and encouraging of yourself, stacking that habit onto something that you've already established and something you've already been doing is a really great way to help build that new neural pathway and that new synaptic connection to ensure that you start doing it more often and more effectively. So, I think, the takeaway within that is just give yourself permission to start small.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be anything huge, and it's okay if it feels like a challenge. You are literally rewiring your brain when you start to take care of yourself.
I love that too, because people are afraid of effort and it doesn't feel comfortable. People like to be comfortable. And if you tie it to something that's comfortable, that's easy, like you said, start really small, and you remind yourself that I'm creating a new neural pathway in my brain. That's just why it's hard. And it's not because I'm terrible or I'm not good at this. It's literally your brain is working hard to try something new, to create this new pathway, to create a new way of life for yourself. And hopefully you realize that you're worth the effort. You are worth investing this time, and start small. But eventually your life will reflect who you are, what you want out of it, and you'll have the energy to do the things you want, or to have conversations in a way that is actually true to who you are, or spend your time doing things that are true to you. I think sometimes we get in these rat races of what I've always done and what my neighbors are doing or what my colleagues are doing, and you really get to choose how you spend your time. You really get to choose where you are, what you're doing. And I think these little things that, if you take a second to have this mantra to put that self-worth back in, or whatever the mantra may be, that it will reflect in all of your time that you value yourself and you value your opinion. And I just think it could be such a game changer. I'm so glad that you tied it to teeth brushing, because I feel like who doesn't brush their teeth?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully.
And starting small will allow you to build confidence, build up that self-efficacy. My question is, because it does look so different for everyone, self-care has to be true to you. How do we know if the practice is effective? I know I've had times where, okay, I'm meditating, I'm taking a bath, I'm doing my affirmations, I am practicing gratitude, writing in my gratitude journal, and I'm still having anxiety, I'm still stressed. What are some ways that I can, maybe just tell myself this is working, I'm feeling it? How do we know when it's working?
It can be really dangerous to start to conflate the idea of self-care as the idea of erasing anxiety, or the idea of never experiencing worry or depression or sadness or anything like that ever again. Taking care of yourself means that we draw from the full spectrum of human emotion. And so if you are feeling anxious and you're practicing lots of self-care, it's maybe an invitation to ask yourself what your anxiety is teaching you, what value your sadness is helping you discern, or, what you can take away from the experience of feeling down. So I think that, we can look at self-care as something that coexists with all of the other emotions that we experience as humans. Personally, I know that my self-care practice is effective when I hear the self-talk that I engage in as being really kind and really compassionate and really loving. So, like, if I make a mistake and I hear myself say, it's okay, I forgive you. What did I learn from this experience? What will we do differently next time? If those are the thoughts that go through my head, I know that I'm doing well, that my self-care is working for me and kind of in alignment with how I want to show up in the world. If I hear myself really berating myself and saying really unkind things to myself or just punishing myself for being human or messing up, that's when I know that maybe I need to do something a little bit different and re-engage with my sense of self-care. So for me, it's really about recognizing when I'm feeling calm and when I'm feeling a sense of ease, and also noticing when I'm not feeling those things and when I'm feeling really full of self-doubt. So I think that just as important as finding out, how do you know your self-care practice is effective is when do we know it's not effective? And I think that you might know that your self-care practice is not working for you if you feel like a consistent sense of self-doubt, if you're constantly engaged in imposter syndrome, if you feel a consistent need for external validation, or you're having a really hard time trusting yourself and your own intuition, or if you're having trouble connecting with your feelings. Those might be some really key signs that perhaps there's more self-care required. Perhaps the self-care that you're practicing needs to be a little bit more integrated into your values and your integrity in order to make it effective.
Oh, I love that, because when we talk about self-care, when you read about self-care, that's not what you read. That's not what you hear. When you look at it from that lens, you are, maybe I'm generalizing, but I personally want to do way more and explore way more and be more compassionate and give myself more grace. Even just hearing you say that, I'm thinking, okay, it's not so much how I feel immediately after, it's throughout, okay, noticing how I'm talking to myself, because for the longest time, like I said, it's after the bubble bath, okay, I don't feel any different. Okay, well, give yourself grace. You're not going to feel it immediately. It's that buildup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you do any like journaling or how did you kind of get started getting really in tune with your feelings? Or maybe you've always been like this, to be kind of in tune with listening to your thoughts, being aware of your thoughts, and then doing something about how you feel about them.
Yeah. I think for me, it started with really understanding what makes me feel activated and anxious, sort of what those triggers are and what those prompts are that lead me to feeling that way. And then it also started with me just noticing what made me feel calm, what made me feel centered. And when I started paying attention to the difference between those two lists, it was really illuminating for me to truly recognize that I needed to make some adjustments in the way that I was living my life. So I think that that's a really great place to get started with this as well. Start noticing what makes you feel activated and anxious versus what makes you feel calm and centered. I think that information is truly the key for unlocking what self-care is for you as an individual.
Yeah. And do you recommend doing that through journaling, meditating? What does that look like?
I think it can look like so many different
Yeah.
things. And that's what's so great about self-care is that, there are so many different things that can count as self-care. But I think that as you're exploring some of these questions, it can, again, be really helpful to explore them with a coach, with a therapist, with a really trusted friend, with somebody who can hold space for your experience and really help you evolve to the next level of you. I think it's really important to recognize also that self-care is all about context. So like a night of watching Netflix and eating a full pint of Ben & Jerry's can totally be self-care. But
Good.
it can also be self-sabotage, right? Like it depends on why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same thing with like buying something that you really want can be a demonstration of valuing yourself and giving yourself something that you know is going to enhance your life. Or it can be a dopamine hit and just a temporary escape. So I have a few more questions that I really love to ask people when they're helping to discern what is self-care and what isn't. And those questions are, will this act help me love myself in the long term? What need will this fulfill for me? Or how will this serve me? Or how will I feel after I do this? And then, am I taking care of myself or am I avoiding something?
Oh, that's a
That's
good one. Oh, I like that one a lot.
Yeah, it
So-
can really shed a lot of light on the context of what's going on with your self-care.
Yeah, I'm thinking of asking myself those every time I open the Amazon app.
Yeah, well, I feel like even, it's tough because you're not going to walk through life with this checklist,
Right.
But to regularly ask you those things, maybe it's when you're at home and you're pulling up Amazon. Maybe that's like, I'm going to pull out the list, and then eventually doing it enough, you'd ask yourself those questions and then you could practice it with anything that you're doing.
Yeah, or just starting with even one of the questions
Right.
that Sonja mentioned, starting small and kind of going from there, just using one to really dig deep and start reflecting.
And I think too, like we kind of talked about before, that, starting with something small is good because this requires effort and that's hard. But also, I think people avoid talking about or thinking about these questions because they are hard and they get you to maybe a truth you don't really like about yourself or something that you should probably give up that you might not feel ready to give up. And that's why I love too, you mentioned support, because I think that happens a lot. When you start talking about self-care, it's not just about what to put in. Sometimes it's taking things out that don't fuel you, that actually take your fuel away. And
But give you that dopamine hit,
right,
which is why it's hard.
it's so hard. And that's the thing. I think sometimes when you get to that beautiful space in your life where you feel aligned, it's because you went through the harder things first. And reminding yourself that this may be ugly, this may feel gross to actually admit that I am a shopping addict, or I do this to avoid feelings, or I, whatever it may be. I think unless you actually just say it out loud or you write it down, like you can't get to that point where you can let it go and it can just be a weight off of you.
You can't find gold until you unleash your ivy.
Oh, girl. Oh, write that one down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's exactly it. That's the nuance of self-care, is that it might change daily. It might change hour to hour or, minute to minute, or it might be consistent for years at a time and then suddenly not work for you anymore. And I think it's really important to give yourself permission to understand that your needs change.
Yes.
That in and of itself is a huge part of just learning how to love yourself and learning how to accept yourself.
And I think too, I know I kind of mentioned this in the beginning too, where it's the self, am I selfish for thinking about this? Am I selfish whenever I'm trying to think about self-care? But there is something about these behaviors changing, or the time you spend changing, or the activities you used to do that you change, that does involve other people. A lot of times we don't make these shifts because of what other people will say or what other people will think. Like, when it comes to alcohol, sometimes you're like, I just don't really feel like drinking, but I don't want them to say something
Peer
to
pressure.
me. Yeah. And it's like, you're a grown adult and you don't feel like drinking. You shouldn't be drinking. You should be doing whatever else you want to do. But it's hard when people have this expectation of what you'll be doing, or you think it'll make them feel bad about, what they're doing. And it's just exhausting,
That, and also the guilt around filling up your cup first, taking care of yourself. Sonja, why is there so much shame around self-care? Why do we feel that? Why are we nervous and hold back and not just fully say, this is what's best for me, I'm going to do it?
I wish I knew. And I like to think that it's changing, that this is like a societal shift that we're all going through. I think people are really starting to understand the value and importance of taking care of ourselves. And I think people are really starting to understand that, you can't pour from an empty cup. And my thought is really that proactively taking care of ourselves allows us to give the best of ourselves to the world around us. And we need that so much in the world these days. Like, the world needs all of us showing up as the best versions of ourselves. And so I think that the more that you take care of yourself and the more that you recognize that selfish doesn't have to be a bad thing, the more aligned you become with what you truly value and how you want to spend your time. And the more you live in alignment with your values, the more you can bring forth your sense of purpose into the world. And the more you can truly just be the most authentic version of yourself. I think the more that you do that, the more you are engaged with your sense of purpose and your sense of authenticity, the more inclined you are to prioritize yourself and to really recognize that taking care of you is vital. And so that's a cycle that kind of perpetuates itself in a good way. And essentially it's what elevates us, and it's what invites us to continually and constantly evolve. So I think that as more people really start to practice incorporating self-care into their routines and truly making their lives about self-care, not self-care that's a Band-Aid, not self-care that interrupts their daily routine, but self-care that is truly integrated in who they want to be and the world that they want to live in. I think the more people will understand the value that it provides, and hopefully that will allow more people to really start engaging in it authentically.
And I think that's contagious too, you know, where if you're doing it for yourself, you wish it for other people. You don't look at people and think that they're being selfish by what they're doing. If you're filling up your cup and you realize the value of how on fire you feel about what you're doing or how you're living, you want that for other people. And then when they're taking care of themselves or doing something sweet, you're not comparing anymore because you're so happy about you filling up your cup that you want other people to fill up their cup. And you're like, yeah.
Well, and also
you deserve that, girl.
The other way around. People see you putting yourself first, taking care, and you're almost giving them permission to do that for themselves.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I see that with you, Sonja. You know, you explain this a lot in social media, how you incorporate around your apartment the amount of plants. But it brings you joy and it fills your cup, and you can tell that it aligns with who you are. You know, you're so passionate about the environment, and it speaks in the look of your apartment. Like you can tell that you're very aligned, and that, you know, you put beautiful things in front of you because that's what you deserve to see, you know? And I just think you're a perfect example of someone that really aligns with who they are. And I just love all of even not just the pictures you provide on Instagram, but the captions to explain, you know, why it's important to do these things. And I hope everybody listening follows you because you have provided so much inspiration for me. And I've learned so much about the environment and finances and politics and all kinds of things. And I want to thank you because I've really enjoyed, you know, just learning about you as a person has inspired me to take better care of myself.
Wow. Well, that means so much to me. I can't thank you enough for sharing that. And it's something that brings so much joy to my world to really help people recognize that they get to choose what their life looks like. Like every single one of us gets to decide what life looks like, and it does not have to follow a specific trajectory. It gets to be about what you want it to be about. And if I have been an example of that in any way, then I'm fulfilling my purpose. So thank you for that.
Yes, of course.
And and I think that, you know, one way I love to demonstrate self-care in my own life is engaging my senses. I think our senses are so underrated. We stop talking about them, you know, as we age, but really starting to think about, like, what is your favorite smell? What do you love to look at? What textures bring you joy?
Cashmere
what
plum.
is it?
Cashmere plum.
Ooh.
Target, the best.
We light it every show because that's exactly,
We'll link it in the show notes because
signature scent.
Yeah, signature scent. But it's exactly what you're saying. You know, we're taking care of ourselves by putting things that are beautiful in front of us. You know, these books inspire us, and we like beauty, and we like these smells, and we want to feel comfortable. So a lot of times I'm wearing my workout clothes, and you know, it's all about having good sound, you know, so we can hear the people. You know, I love where you're going with this because it is so important where, you know, if you're going to be smelling things, you might as well smell what you love to smell.
Right.
You know, it's that simple.
It doesn't have to be this complicated.
Right. It's so simple, but I think that people lose sight of it, or they don't really fully recognize how much joy it could bring them, or how much it could elevate their life to do something as simple as putting a texture in your space that you love, or changing the background of your desktop at work from the corporate logo to something beautiful. You know, why not bring a little bit of joy into your everyday experiences? That is one of the easiest ways to truly practice self-care, and it's just so impactful.
You know, you think of what you see on social media and all of these extravagant things, going on vacation, getting a massage, getting your nails done. And for the people who, you know, are like, I can't afford to get my nails done every week. I can't, you know, I don't want to be putting money into that. How do I take care of myself? It's these little things, adding scents, changing your desktop that's free, just adding little things throughout your day that are going to bring you joy, that are so small but have such a huge effect and impact on your overall mental health.
Just joy.
Yeah. I'd love to talk through just a few examples of what people might integrate into their lifestyles. Is that okay?
Please.
I was going to ask you.
I want
yes.
every idea you have in your brain. So just keep talking.
All right. Well, just a short list of things that count as self-care or things that people might think about beginning to incorporate into their routines are things like breathing exercises. We can certainly go into a little bit more detail about the power of your breath, but YouTube is a great resource for really like just kind of getting started with some simple breathing exercises. Working with a coach or with a therapist is an invaluable way to just show yourself that you prioritize you. You prioritize your own growth and your own evolution and your own self. Journaling, taking your medication, defining what your values are, going to bed early or staying up late, depending on what it is that you need, telling yourself, I love you, experiencing play, meditation, giving yourself permission to try again tomorrow, committing to a routine or breaking your routine, reading, prayer, setting healthy boundaries in your relationships, addressing conflict with people that you really deeply care about, taking a shower, taking a bath, hand massage or face massage, especially as so many of us spend time alone. It can be really healing to engage in, some actual physical self-care. And hand massage and face massage are two really simple ways to do that. Also, unfollowing people or muting people on social media, can't recommend it enough. Taking a break from social media if you think that would enhance your life. Buying something nice for yourself, engaging with your senses, eating foods that nourish you both physically and emotionally, cleaning and organizing, listening to a podcast, guided visualizations, taking a sip of water, stretching, washing your face, exercising or skipping your workout, putting a hand over your heart, mantras or affirmations, saying no, observing your own thoughts and behaviors, and finally, keeping one small promise to yourself. Those are all just simple examples of things that people can start to do if they're interested in building self-care into their routines.
Thank you for providing that, because I think that's what people are looking for. Sometimes you don't even want to think about, what could I do? What? Okay, I know I need to do this, but what does it even mean? And I just love sometimes just giving people examples so that, out of that list, there's
one.
There's there's got to be one.
One. And what I loved about it was a lot of those, if not almost all of them, were free.
Yes.
Which is huge.
Yes.
Yeah, you talked about affirmations, and I'm curious, what are some of your favorite affirmations?
My favorite affirmation is to tell myself, you've got this. That's one I find myself saying a lot. Anytime that I'm facing a challenge, specifically at work or something, in my personal life where I just need to remind myself that I can do it, it's just helpful to say something as simple as, you've got this. I also have a word that I use frequently, and the word is svaha, S-V-A-H-A, and it's a Sanskrit word, and the translation of the word is essentially to make sure that every action is aligned with who you are and what you want to represent in the world, but don't be attached to the outcome or how other people receive it.
Oh, you have a necklace. Don't you have a necklace that says that?
I'm wearing it right now.
Are you? I love that necklace. That was like one of the first
Yeah.
things you've told me. And I was like, I don't know who this Sonja girl is, but I want to hang out with her more because everything she says is gold.
Wow. Yeah, that's been an incredibly healing word for me. And I find it really helpful to just have something simple that I can go back to and I can repeat in my head in moments when I'm feeling full of anxiety or full of doubt or if I just need a reminder. So
How do you say it again?
Svaha, Svaha.
Okay.
Svaha. It's not even like soothing to say.
Want to go to the Svaha?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so well, we want to be considerate of your time and our listeners' times, but we would love to get one last thought from you or final thoughts from you because your words are so beautiful, and I just want to give you the opportunity to say any last thing that you were thinking.
I just so appreciate the opportunity to be here in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what your listeners bring into their lives and into their own new self-care routines.
Yes,
and we will for sure have Sonja back because, I mean, obviously, talk about finances. I know that's a hot topic that I would love to selfishly pick your brain about. But we talked a lot about your Instagram, and so I know a lot of our listeners would love to know your handle. So where can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm Sonja Ecklund, and that's SonjaEcklund. And you can find my website at sonjaecklund.com.
Perfect. And we'll link those in the show notes because I know you guys are really going to want to follow her.
Yes. Yes. To be able to see, we'll link all of that on all of our socials and including in the Ivy League newsletter and blog. So you'll be able to see that. So before we jump into our 3 gold stars, we just want to thank you so much, Sonja, for being here and all that you provide for us. You know, I feel like it's essential to think about self-care this year, especially, like you said, in your home, in your space, where you are, with the people that you love, and just thinking of small ways that you can do it. And so I just so appreciate you being here. And now it's time for the 3 gold stars.
All right, Sonja. So we like to wrap up with 3 gold stars. So 3 takeaways. If there's 3 things out of all of the gold that you shared, what would you like our listeners to walk away with today?
I would love for people to walk away with an invitation to start paying attention to the moments when you feel really whole and really complete, and paying attention to those moments when you feel really broken and really depleted. That in and of itself is going to help you discern your values. It's going to help you get really clear on what self-care might mean for you, and it's going to help you build self-awareness. The second thing is say no. Give yourself permission to say no to anything that brings you down, anything that takes away your peace, or anything that just doesn't feel like it's in alignment with who you truly are. Saying no is one of the best things we can do to truly practice self-care. And then finally, breathe. So simple, but really understanding the power of your breath and recognizing that it is our life force and it is absolutely the thing that can help us turn around negative thoughts, self-limiting beliefs. Really, it can give you new energy, new power, and new life. So don't underestimate the power of your breath.
Love it. Oh, gave me chills. All right, up next, we have Unleashing Ivy. So this is our rapid fire question segment. So we're going to ask you 3 rapid fire questions. Whatever comes to your mind is your answer.
All right.
Are you ready? All right. Number 1, what's one thing you do to center yourself?
I would have to say my gratitude journal is the most centering thing that I've done for myself this year. I have a gratitude calendar where I can see all 365 days of the year at once. And I do this right before bed. I write down something that brought me joy, helped me experience gratitude, or just something that I want to remember about the day. And it is so cool to be able to see something from every single day of this year, especially this year, since it's been a little bit strange.
I love that.
Yeah, and that is something that really, truly centers me. I do it right before I get into bed at night, and it's improved my life a lot.
Is that something that you created or a template, like a book that you bought?
Something I created, yeah, but something you could totally do with just like a monthly wall calendar even.
That is an awesome idea.
love
I love
that.
that. I'm stealing that.
All right, next. When you're really struggling to make time for yourself a priority, what's one thing that steers you in a positive direction?
Going outside. More than anything, going outside helps me the most. Specifically, going outside and looking up at the sky. No matter what the sky is doing, it's always different and it is always beautiful. There's always some kind of like majesty and wonder in seeing what the sky is doing. And it also just gives me so much perspective, helps me remember that there is so much more than what's going on in my world. And just standing outside, looking up at the sky and taking a few deep breaths is something that always helps put me back on track.
Love that. I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah. All right. Last question. What is one thing you wish you would have known sooner?
So from the time that I was very young, probably like 10 or 11 years old, my grandma would always tell me this quote. And the quote was, "You wouldn't care so much what other people thought of you if you realized how seldom they do." And I heard that many, many times throughout my teenage years, but I didn't understand the value of that sentiment. And I wish I had understood how true that is and how meaningful it is a little bit sooner in my life. I feel like I carried this idea with me that people were like judging me or looking at me or questioning the things that I was doing for many, many years. And when I really recognized that other people judging me are really just reflections of how they feel about themselves, it gave me this permission and this freedom that I needed to just take care of myself in the way that makes most sense for me. So I heard the lesson from a very young age. It took me a while to really understand it.
Oh, I love that so much. That
That's
is such a
beautiful.
good point. Well, thank you again, Sonja, for being with us today. Your wisdom, your insight is always, you always have something new and different to say and always full of so many ideas. And I really hope that the listeners take away something today that, you know, really speaks to them and their truth, and that they use it to level up their life or just recenter themselves, or like you said, just breathe, look at the sky, you know, any of those things. I think all of those things can be really helpful and kind of get you back to thinking about, you know, your integrity and how you want to live your life, or how important it is to take good care of yourself.
Yeah. And you, as always, are such a light, and you've provided so many good tips. If our listeners just do one thing that you mentioned out of the hundreds, it would be so helpful. And so you really, worded it in a way that it doesn't have to be that complicated. Just do something that feels true and raw for you, and you're going to benefit from it.
Definitely. All right. And for our last segment today, your piece of gold.
Sonja, would you like to do the honors?
I'd love to. I am going to quote Brené Brown. And one thing she says is, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.